Welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for Generating Student and Solar Power. The purpose of this webinar is to share a story of students who advocated for solar at their school and succeeded. If you want to bring solar to your school or any learning institution, ideally you want to involve students in the process. So, how do you get student groups to have an impact and make the leap from being a club to becoming activists? We hope this webinar will show you how. The agenda for today's webinar is divided into 6 parts, and we'll begin now with introductions. I'm Laura Beebe. I'm a teacher at the Winsor School. Windsor is located in Boston, near Fenway Park, in the heart of the Longwood Medical area. I teach English in our middle school, but I'm also the faculty advisor for the Planet Protectors, which is an environmental club for our middle school students, grades 5 through 8. I'm passionate about reading and I'm passionate about the planet, and I love helping young people find ways to take action and be catalysts for change.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Nika Bigelow. I'm currently a junior at the Winsor School, and I'm also an alum of the Planet Protectors Club that Miss Beebe founded. She founded it the year that I was in 7th grade, so I was part of that first batch of Planet Protectors when I was in 7th grade. Outside of school, I'm the president of Windsor's Speech and Debate Club, captain of the mock trial team, and a staff writer on the school newspaper, among other things. So as you can probably tell, I'm passionate about public speaking, but also helping the environment and initiating meaningful change in the Windsor community and beyond.
And hi, everyone. My name is Madeleine Barr. I'm a co-founder and VP of Outreach and Sales at Resonant Energy. I've been in the clean energy industry here in Boston for about 10 years now, with a background in energy efficiency, work in solar, electric vehicles, and community-wide programming, design, and implementation for various clean energy and renewable projects. Also passionate about clean energy. And the opportunity that we have with solar to really turn a piece of equipment that powers our buildings into a learning and community organizing tool.
So now we can dive into Windsor Solar's story. So just to situate ourselves, this is a timeline of the solar project at Windsor. So in the fall of 2019, Ms. Beebe came up with the idea for the Planet Protectors Club, and we met for the first time in the first few weeks of school in September. And after our initial brainstorm meeting, we decided we wanted to look into a solar project and reach out to Ms. Barr. Then in January of 2020, myself and one other planet protector presented to the Board of Trustees of the Winsor School, including Ms. Pelmas, the head of school. And in spring of 2021, after a year of COVID, Windsor approved the solar project officially and signed the contract. And then between July of 2021 and August of 2022, we went through the whole installation process, including site walkthroughs in July, Crane Day in March, completing installation in April, and finally turning the panels on officially on August 9th of 2022. So this is actually an image of a solar display that we have at the school that communicates the statistics of the solar panels as time goes on. So some key stats here are the production, the specific yield, but perhaps more digestibly, the pounds of carbon dioxide emissions that we've saved so far in the lifetime of the solar panels, which is 346,000, and the miles driven on sunshine, which is 393,000. So there's some pretty significant benefits already just within the first 2 or so years of the solar panel's lifetime. So now let's go into a little bit more depth with the actual process for the whole solar project. So after that first meeting, Ms. Beebe wanted us to do a little brainstorm, the 6 other members of the club, including myself, as to what environmental change we could bring about in the Windsor community. So at this first brainstorm meeting, we had some pretty wild ideas thrown out there. We were initially talking about putting a greenhouse in the courtyard, putting a windmill in the parking lot of the school. And a lot of these ideas seemed perhaps a little bit far-fetched and not exactly easy to implement. And in that same meeting, we came up with the idea of solar panels. And this, well, initially also seemed far-fetched, came to seem like a more tangible solution out of the ones that we had discussed and brainstormed in that meeting. And we started to talk to Mr. Crompton, the head of facilities at Windsor, about the possibility of solar panels a few meetings into the school year. And he actually told us that when Windsor had built its major, like modern athletic complex less than 10 years ago, I believe, they had considered installing solar panels on it at that time. But since that was a very major project, that idea didn't really get through the full stages of approval, and they kind of postponed it, set it aside for a while. But they had considered it before, which was really interesting to hear. And from that meeting, we also learned that Mr. Crompton knew of a solar company called Resonant Energy that is very local and seemed like a really great option to him. So from there, we actually emailed Ms. Barr at Resonant Energy and reached out to them to see if we could meet to actually talk about what the specifics of such a project at Windsor might look like. And after a number of meetings with Resonant Energy and quite a lot of research on our own in club meetings as to the benefits of solar panels, the different financing options we would have, and with Mr. Crompton, how much money it would actually save Windsor and the actual tangible environmental benefits for Windsor, we met with the head of school, just the club, and Ms. Pelmis, to kind of pitch this idea in a very preliminary way to her and tell her, hey, we came up with this idea. We know Windsor had been talking about it a little bit quite a while ago. We wanted to bring it up again with some fresh data and statistics and a renewed need for change in the community. We also went to homerooms, which are the 30-person kind of groups of people that each grade is divided into, and put up these solar panel petitions that we encouraged all our classmates in the lower school and beyond. The lower school is middle school at Windsor. We encouraged them all to sign it in support of solar panels. And we actually got the vast majority of lower schoolers to sign these petitions. None of them had really thought about such a project before. There hadn't really seemed like a good space for coming up with solutions or advocating for institutional change. But on hearing this idea of, hey, why don't we put solar panels on our big athletic and arts complex, everyone got really excited and immediately started signing up. And these are just 2 of the many, many sheets of paper we used up with petitions. So from there, after meeting with Mr. Crompton, Ms. Pelmis, and Resonant Energy a handful of times, we decided that it was time to meet with the Board of Trustees and officially propose the project to the school decision-making body. So initially, we were supposed to have 5 presenters out of our small club, but the day of, 3 of them got sick. There was a really bad cold going around, and it just so happened that myself and one other girl in the club had to take over all the parts of the presentation just minutes before we were actually supposed to go into the meeting room, which was a little bit stressful, but also really exciting to be able to have that more interpersonal connection with the board members and to really be responsible for pitching the idea and for communicating what we wanted to get out of the project. So this other girl and I presented to the 10 or so people on the Board of Trustees, and Ms. Pumis, the head of school, and the Director of Facilities, Mr. Crompton, and both of the latter two had been involved in the process all along, but this was kind of their formal introduction to our proposal. And we had note cards to make sure we're getting all our statistics straight, but we also had a pretty decent length Q&A at the end so that the board members could ask questions about the panels. And we thought at the conclusion of the assembly that it went really great. We got a lot of encouraging feedback and comments at the end about how excited the board members were about this proposal and to hear it from the students themselves. And we were really excited by what seemed to be the immediate reaction to the board meeting. But that was in January of 2020. So we all know what happened after that. Shortly after that Board of Trustees meeting, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And for about a year or so, every institution and school in the country was scrambling to figure out what they were going to do about their schedules, their students, how people were going to come back in person. So the project was kind of put aside for a while and we didn't really hear much about it. But the actual proposal that we pitched to the Board of Trustees was to install 350 solar modules or solar panels, about 425 watts each, on the roof of our LOC, our modern athletic complex. There's also an older academic building on our campus that is attached to this building, but since that building has a sloped roof, and it is quite a bit older, and that's where a lot of kind of the day-to-day academic classes and activities of the students are happening. We decided with Mr. Crompton with Resonant Energy that it would be a much bigger space, a much safer and more effective place to put them to install the solar panels on the various different levels of this like modern building's roof. So the size of the solar panels was to be 7 by 3 feet. They are 7 to 9 pounds per square foot, and our projected output was 174,591 kilowatts per year. So the upfront cost that we estimated with Resonant Energy was $356,973 upfront. And we also calculated that the solar panels would account for about a third of Windsor's daily energy needs, which is quite a bit. We found out from Mr. Crompton that the LOC alone cost about $500 a day to operate purely from an electricity perspective. And as you can probably calculate yourself, that adds up to quite a bit of money over the course of the year, which Windsor really could be allocating to other areas that would actually directly benefit the students, whether that's supplies, programming, field trips, investing in curriculum or extracurriculars. There are a number of other places where we, the students, but also the school, would much rather be allocating that money if possible. And we also, in our proposal, emphasized that solar panels would greatly reduce Windsor's carbon footprint and save the environmental equivalent of 153 acres of forest annually, which is a huge amount, especially because we want the solar panels to be up for as long as possible. So April 27th of 2021, about a little over a year after COVID hit and we're kind of starting to get out of that craziness of the first few months, we got an email from Ms. Geremini, who is Windsor's Chief Operating Officer, that essentially confirmed that Windsor would be moving forward with the solar project, and that Windsor was going to be working with Resonant Energy and Ms. Barr to actually install the solar panels on the roof of the LOC. So she also said that there would be a proposal in the next few weeks. And this really initiated a very open line of communication between Windsor administration, Resonant Energy, and the club, which because it was like the following school year, we technically weren't a club anymore. From those original members, Ms. Beebe had a new batch of students, but this group that had of 6 or so people that had initiated the solar project stayed together, and we were able to be looped into a lot of the meetings that went on between Resonant Energy, Mr. Compton, the school administration, and to kind of get these really in-depth status updates throughout the course of the project from there as the members of the initial club that had proposed the idea. So post-approval after April of 2021, there was definitely still quite a road ahead to getting the solar panels turned on in August of 2022. So there was a crane day where we had this massive crane come in behind the school to actually lift the solar panels and all the supplies needed for installation up onto the roof. This was a little bit of a logistical obstacle because Windsor is right in the middle of the Longwood medical area, which obviously you can't obstruct a major pathway through the road that has a lot of Boston's best hospitals in it. So we had to find a workaround and not block the road where all the ambulances were and maneuver into this very small back entrance to Windsor. But it went on without a hitch. It went very successfully. We got all the supplies up there. We had around 4 meetings with Resonant Energy to discuss project, process, everything that was going on with the solar panels. And we learned about the various stages of approval, from interconnection with the utility, getting the building permit, getting the electrical permit. Mr. Crompton talked to us about having to check in with all the other buildings in the Longwood medical area to make sure they were okay with crane day, with the project going on, with solar panels being installed, and ultimately getting that solar energy into the power grid. And it did take quite some time, about a year, to go through all of these stages and to actually get the solar panels installed. But it went very successfully, and it was a really cool process to see from the perspective of the students participating in all these meetings and the greater Windsor community being able to actually see these solar panels being installed on the roof in real time. So now in the present day, we have some various initiatives for engagement at Windsor. So firstly, students can see a screen display in the school's central lobby with an iPad with various statistics that are in a live stream of the panel's output, production trends. They can see how much solar energy the panels are producing per day, per week, per month. They can look at these trends over time. They can look at the composite environmental benefits that the solar panels have brought about. And because of the central position of this iPad, where people can see all these statistics, see the aerial pictures and this beautiful framed installation, students are really able to be reminded daily, because we're not on the roof of the LOC daily, but to be reminded daily of the solar panels and the continuing environmental benefits they have for the Windsor community. Some science teachers have also been able to start incorporating solar panels into their curriculum, and specifically the Windsor Solar Project as a case study. We learned recently about a 7th grade science teacher who was doing a short presentation in his class about kind of the project and the process we went through as planet protectors to get the solar panels on the roof of the LOC, as well as kind of how the solar panels work on a basic level and the true environmental impact they have for Windsor. And more than that, the solar panels are a symbolic reminder that no dream is too big and that students should and do have a say in the changes enacted and the administration of their school as a whole.
Great. Thanks so much, Nika. So yeah, just as a reminder, I'll talk a little bit in this next section, what we're seeing and just some trends in the solar industry right now. Yeah, again, my name is Madeleine Barr with Resonant Energy. In Resonant Energy, we're a Boston-based solar provider, and we specialize in working with nonprofits. So we do a lot of work with schools and houses of worship and community centers and multifamily affordable housing. And we're based right here in Boston in downtown. Our office is in Chinatown. and we work throughout Massachusetts and some parts of New York. And a big reason we're seeing a lot of organizations go solar is just because a lot of everyone is feeling the squeeze of increasing electricity costs. So this data that you're looking at was last updated in August of 2023. And you can see just a huge, the huge jump with all the utilities, especially National Grid, but also with Eversource in electricity rates. This spike happened in the winter of that year. And it does go back down. Some of those spikes are definitely seasonal, but generally this trend is going up and up and up. And nonprofits and schools in particular are feeling that in their operating budgets and what they have to plan. And so solar is a major way, of course, that organizations can protect themselves, not just save money, but also have more predictability in what their operating budgets will look like. And solar, in general, how much it will cover very much depends on the size of the space, the orientation of your roof, how sunny or shady it is, and the electricity use in the building. So you could save anywhere from 30 or 40% up to 100% of your building's electricity bills. And as Nika discussed, really use that saved money for activities and investments that are much more in your organization's core values. Rather than on electricity, you can spend it on scholarship programs or outdoor programs or enrichment programs for your students or your members or whichever audience you serve. And again, have reduced costs and just more predictability in your annual operating budget. And this you can see on the left here is the lobby display that Nika referenced that has the production of the solar projecting in real time. And then we also participated in a school-wide forum to also share this exciting project with the school. Nika is in, I think, both of these pictures. So Nika, I'll let you share a little bit more.
Yeah, so in the picture to the right, we did an all-school assembly, as Ms. Barr said, and this was really critical to actually inform the community about the solar panels. This was shortly after they were turned on, I believe, in the fall of 2022. And this allowed, obviously, all the new students who had come in, whether they were the brand new fifth graders or the 36th graders that are added every year, or the new ninth graders who are just entering high school at Windsor who don't really know that much about the school. And for this to be one of their kind of first all-school gatherings to hear about the steps that Windsor has taken to mitigate our environmental impacts, and also the true power and influence that students who speak up for what they believe in, speak up for change, can have in their community, I think was a really powerful way to be introduced to Windsor. And it also made sure that everyone in the community, even if they hadn't really been paying attention to the goings on about the school, were aware of actually like the solar panels and the true extent to which they were benefiting the school, which was really cool. And then on the left, I am in that picture, and it was basically the unveiling of the monitoring station, which was installed just a little bit after the solar panels themselves, and being able to really like see those statistics and all the things that we could click through and see updated on a like second by second basis was really cool and powerful as well.
So looking ahead into this year, some of you may be familiar with the Inflation Reduction Act, which passed what I'm realizing now is the same month that the Windsor Solar Project was energized, but in August of 2022. And it is a enormous climate bill passed by Congress. And this bill has a lot in it, but it has a couple key pieces that I'll talk about. One of them is that it increased the federal tax credit for solar, which had been set to decline and was currently at 22%, up to 30%. and extended that for 10 years, and it was supposed to phase out by this year or so. And then another huge sort of game-changing piece of the legislation for nonprofits is that it created an option called elective pay, for which nonprofits that are tax exempt can still benefit from this tax credit as a direct rebate. So this is new. It has just been rolled out. We're going through it with our nonprofit partners as we speak, and learning all about how it works and and what kind of timelines to expect. But it's really a game changer, because for the first time, the tax credit has been, had been around for a while, but this is the first time that it is available as a cash rebate. And so we're working with our partners to access that. And in addition, this climate bill also has huge additional incentives for environmental justice benefiting projects. So there's a few different categories that we've outlined here. We can talk about more in more detail at another time, but based on where the project is located and who the project benefits, that 30% tax credit could increase to 40 or 50%. So depending on the type of project you set up, if it's a low-income community solar array or benefiting affordable housing, you could possibly get a 50% rebate on the total project cost. So really trying to make more equitable projects, more accessible solar projects work financially as well. So if you are thinking about going solar, or you know an organization thinking about going solar, but you aren't sure about taking out a loan or paying cash up front, there are different types of financing that the new federal legislation can really still support. So there's direct ownership if you do want to own it outright, and there's lots of benefits to that. Long-term savings, but does require that upfront capital investment or an upfront loan. And then we have a couple no cost options. So you could do a power purchase agreement, which is slightly lower long-term savings, but a no cost option that may work for your building, for your organization. And then we have a couple cool community solar style financing arrangements as well. So maybe you have a really large building, but you have a very small electricity use. We can help you really maximize that available space for clean energy. And I find either subscribers for that electricity or send it to low-income residents as well. And again, that could be either a no cost upfront, a sort of leasing arrangement, or an ownership. So there's lots of different ways you can go solar. If you want to do it, but cost has felt like a barrier, or just the amount of information has felt like a barrier, we would be here to help you through that. And these are some examples that I'll just touch on quickly, and then we'll be in the slides if you want to revisit. But just to give a sense of, a kind of case study, this building here is an affordable housing organization in East Boston. A 96 kilowatt array did a no cost power purchase agreement, and they're seeing about a 34% discount on their electricity. And that equals to about $6,200 in annual savings. And then another example to show you a sort of a direct ownership. Nika shared some of the numbers for the Winsor School as well. But this is a private high school in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, 280 kilowatts, so quite a bit bigger. Upfront cost of about $647,000. Year one savings, $84,000, and the project has paid for itself by the end of year 6. So there is really meaningful savings in these two different options. And what we could do is look at your building and put together a design that includes both of them, so you can compare apples to apples. And this is just what you would receive as a cash flow. I'm going to not go too into this now, but just to show that we can help sort of estimate what your year-by-year savings and what you could anticipate for an ongoing insurance and maintenance costs could look like. And that tax credit too, in that middle blue column, that you would receive back what we're anticipating about 12 to 18 months after the project. So in addition to all of the very real benefits on the environmental side, on the student empowerment side, on the community building side, solar is in a place right now in the country and in Massachusetts even more so, where it can really also offer a meaningful financial return for your organization. And if you did want to follow up, we have our information here and could put together a design to help you understand what your building's capacity is, look at what you actually pay in electricity, and see how the two things compare.
Right, I'm gonna speak up again. Again, I'm Laura, and I'm the teacher and the faculty advisor, and watch students go to work on this idea that they had. And so if we take a look at the next slide, the question of how can students be more involved? Really, the first question to address is time. Students need dedicated time to be able to meet and to dig into the research, to reach out to other students, to create that enthusiasm, and ultimately also to connect to professionals like Resonant Energy and also school administrators to get their proposal sort of out there. In our school, we have the middle schoolers meet half an hour, 30 minutes every week in sort of a club time. So that is really important, but other times I suppose could be set aside. But that would be the number one thing, is making sure students had a forum, a place, a time where they could meet and get their ideas off the ground. Once past that brainstorming stage, students should be invited to all the meetings. So once it goes beyond the idea and the proposal is approved, students, whenever possible, and you need to work around schedules, which can be tricky, should be included in the meeting. So whether they're meetings with the school administrators, the facilities staff, or also the solar providers. And it's really important to include students at every step, and also important to avoid diluting or diminishing the material in any way. Advanced content is not an excuse to exclude students from any step of a project. They can learn the material and they can also ask questions, which is a good actual life skill for them to have.
Yeah, and just adding on to Ms. Beebe, why is student activism and leadership actually important? So while the answer might seem self-evident and just that it is important, student leadership and activism, even at the middle school level, has critical impacts for the real world and for preparing students for their futures and giving them actual real life experience. So firstly, student activism and leadership mimics and prepares them for collaboration in the real world. Throughout the project, even if we weren't the ones ultimately deciding the exact number of solar panels that Windsor would install or making these detailed decisions that are really crucial to the project, we were collaborating with Resonant Energy, with Ms. Pelmis, with Mr. Crompton, with the school administration, with each other, and with Ms. Beebe throughout all steps of the process. We were working together to research, to propose, to communicate our ideas, and we were also collaborating in these kind of team meetings and updates that we received throughout the course of the installation process. Sometimes there would be an issue like this one material got a tiny bit delayed. Like, what do we do about it? And well, again, the students wouldn't be the ones with the ultimate say in it. We would get to kind of talk through a little bit and not just sit in the corner and kind of listen to what the adults were talking about, which was really valuable collaborative experience. And it's also a huge learning experience to see people actually in the industry, in this case, in the solar industry, doing their day-to-day jobs, and the level of like logistical competency that's required to get through all of that, the actual policies and various steps that solar projects have to go through for approval on the state level and on like the community level, which I think was a particular step for the Windsor project because we were in that very populous, important Longwood Medical area. And I know that a number of actual people out of that group of 6 who are actually seniors right now are going on to study environmental engineering and environmental justice in college. So not only did it kind of set forward a career path for them and really pique their interest in a specific industry and in a specific sector, but it really allowed them to get these actual like lived experiences under their belts so that they could um, actually engage with the material that they were learning about and start to envision their futures and take perhaps an interest and a love for the environment as kids to really something that they felt like they could be learning about for the next 4 years at least of their lives. Um, Student activism and leadership also cultivates critical self-advocacy skills and the ability to actually not just like come up with ideas and propose ideas, which is commonplace, I would say, in any classroom, but actually being able to see those ideas through logistically and understand the steps and the minute details that it takes to see an actual project to completion and actually implement a change and the way that it goes beyond just saying, we would like, for example, compost bins, which is a project that Miss Beebe's Planet Protectors just in the recent years has worked on as well. And going beyond just saying, like, we want that to happen, to actually going to the people in charge, going to the cafeteria staff in the school to say exactly what the students want to happen, exactly how that would benefit, and the logistics of implementing such a change. So that taught really self-advocacy and this like logistical and practical thinking that's necessary and goes beyond the imagination and the kind of incentive, which is definitely important in and of itself, but really integrating those two aspects of student involvement in school projects really leads to the whole activism and leadership aspect. And more than that, it also allows people to apply what they see in textbooks or maybe things that are talked about in class into actual lived experiences and real life tangible solutions, which is a really important skill, especially for like as students are getting older and starting to think about their lives in a broader sense. And finally, seeing real change is really inspiring. One student project can feed off of another, can spark another. They can all collaborate and make even more meaningful change in the community. So that's the last aspect of student activism and leadership that makes it a really critical part of any healthy, well-functioning, and optimized school community. Now, any questions? You can submit them in the Q&A or in the chat. I see one question asking what my favorite aspect of the solar project was. So it's hard to say because there are so many favorite aspects I have, but I think one core memory that stood out was definitely presenting to the Board of Trustees, which I know I talked about earlier. But I think as a 7th grader and my co-presenter as an 8th grader, we had never really I think, presented any sort of formal project or communicated in any formal way with a board as powerful as the Board of Trustees within the Windsor community. Um, and being able to actually like get to that kind of highest level of administration and talk to them and having it feel like we were kind of proud of what we were proposing, like we really believed in it and had a passion for making it happen was really, really cool. And seeing their reaction and how receptive they were to this institutional change that we were proposing and to like it being presented by students, which I guess in the back of my mind, like there's this idea that maybe they won't take us seriously because we're just lower schoolers, we're just middle schoolers. But seeing that actually that's not the case, and if anything, it's the opposite, and that they're more impressed and more taking it even more seriously because it's kind of even at the youngest ages that the students want this environmental benefit for the Windsor community and beyond. That was really, really inspiring to me and definitely one of my favorite moments.
Thanks, Nika. I see another question, which is how would you encourage other younger students to conceive and implement a similar project?
I can start on this one and then maybe hand it off to Miss Beebe, but I think one really important thing is continuing these avenues for like younger student involvement. Miss Beebe is still running the Planet Protectors Club. They have a new batch of students every year, and every year they do propose and follow through and actually enact some level of environmental project at Windsor. I know something they're working on right now is to reduce the number of paper towel dispensers we have and trying to replace those with more like hand blow dryers. Um, and also like with whiteboard markers, making those more sustainable and maybe refillable. So having these like continued opportunities, whether it's in the form of clubs or organizations that may meet even outside of school within a school community and even at the middle school level, I think is really, really important. And once students see that as an option, have it like presented to them at club fairs, homerooms, assemblies, whatever it may be, they see that that's an option for them, and that there are people who are doing that, and that they are instituting these actual changes, that something is being done through that organization or club or whatever it may be. I think that is very inspiring. And even if a younger student obviously doesn't think, oh, I'm going to solve climate change tomorrow, that's not maybe their goal as a fifth grader in life, seeing something dedicated to helping the climate or whatever avenue of student leadership or activism it may be, seeing something that they care about or even thinking it's interesting um, is, I think, really inspiring for younger students, that also like encourages them to implement maybe a project of their own or engage in some sort of club that they see as instituting environmental or another kind of change in the community.
Yeah, I would just emphasize what Nika was saying about a student with an interest finding other students or other people with similar interests, because there is some power in the numbers. It's a little harder to do this sort of thing all by yourself, but if you have a group or a club, it's easier to bounce ideas off each other and to really, I think, gather momentum. So I would really encourage younger students to find other people with a similar passion.
Great. I see another question here. Do you think Windsor's project inspired other schools or organizations to follow its solar lead?
I'll say something first, and maybe others may have more information too. And Madeleine, you can talk about the schools for solar concept too. But we actually presented the group, I say we, but really it was the group. The Planet Protectors presented at a conference called the National Coalition of Girls Schools, and it happened to be in Boston. And so a number of people were inspired by that presentation. And I had some conversation with a person who worked at a school actually in England, and we had several conversations. It turned out it was too hard to sort of go forward just because the time difference was too complicated for us to do a lot more. But I know he was very inspired by the students and the fact that they had seen this project through. And I also know some members of the Planet Protectors Club who were on the solar team communicated with some students at a school in Boston on Newbury Street. And that school was interested in solar panels and wanted to know how the students had gone about doing it. I think in the end, their building couldn't support the panels, but it was an interesting conversation for the students involved.
Yeah, Nika, do you have anything that you would add to that question?
Yeah, I think just I echo everything Miss Beebe said, and we have had these opportunities to kind of engage with other schools who have actually sought us out and been inspired by like either seeing in the news or seeing walking around in Boston or um, hearing in some other way about the Windsor Solar Project and really like wanting to hear more about it and being inspired by it and maybe not 100% of cases will be able to actually like mimic that and do their own solar project, but I think it does provide this space for other schools and other institutions for dialogue about solar panels, about really exploring that possibility, and more than that, exploring the opportunity for an environmental project or some sort of student initiated installation that would really help the community be more environmentally friendly.
Right, right. And I know in conversations I've had with other schools and other nonprofits, that this story I think is definitely motivating and catching on. And I know, Resonant has worked with 250 individual nonprofits, and this is certainly the first time that it's been young people really driving the process. And I think when people learn that, it's inspiring. It's inspiring to know that there's that kind of motivation and focus. I think on all the things that Nika talked about on the environmental side, but also on like investing in their own space and community and in their building. Um, and we've been working to put together a program called Students for Solar inspired out of this to help, where maybe a school is interested in solar, but there hasn't been as much of this sort of grassroots approach, that we're working to put together a way to bring solar into the classrooms so that students can be connected with it. So more to come on that, um, but from anecdotally and from direct conversations we've had, it moves people. So that looks like it's all of our questions that were submitted. So if anything comes up for anyone else on the call, please feel free to email any of us. And we'd love to be happy to chat more. But thanks everyone for joining. We really appreciate the time and sharing this story, and hope that it does inspire you and you can help continue to broadcast it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.